Good morning, friends. Hello, friends. Hello, hello. Good morning to you. Pray you are doing well. How are you on this fine day? Give it a moment for folks to come along. How are you all? I hope you are grand and good. Hey, Kristen, good morning to you. Just over here. It's a neat day with a neat sky that kind of some low clouds. So over here, looking out at the Braga Bridge. So it's a beautiful day. Good morning, everyone. A little sailboat action this morning. If you don't know, I'm a sailor and I like to follow the some of the different races. And right now, the Rudy return, which is the return from the uh, the Jacques Vabre transatlantic race, is happening with the Amaka Open 60 class, and so they're a bunch of, basically what that means is there's a bunch of sailors out there in the Atlantic right now single-handedly battling it out on 60-foot boats, trying to go 30 knots or better, all by themselves, and so they're just a ball to watch. So I got my sailing mug this morning in honor of the Amaka class out there grinding it out. All right. Good morning, everybody. Let's get going this morning. It is the 5th day of December. We're almost a week into December. Can you believe it already? On this 11/11, this a beautiful Tuesday for us to gather to spend a moment in reflection. We have officially entered what is known as the Advent season. So the clock has changed, the time has changed on the church year, and the church year ended last week and began anew this Sunday, the 3rd of December, with the beginning of Advent, first Advent, where we decorated the sanctuary, and don't worry, we'll show that off here in the coming days. We've gathered, we've spent, we're on, and that Advent really simply means waiting. It's this period of looking towards Bethlehem, looking towards the Christ, looking towards the birth of Christ. This beginning of the cycle of Christ anew in the world. But you know what? If you look at the world and you look at actually what's going on, if you go out to, I stopped by the bakery this morning, and there's a whole bunch of there was a whole bunch of cupcakes at the bakery, and they all had little toppers on them. None of the toppers said Happy Advent. None of them. They all said what? That's right, Merry Christmas. That actually we want to kind of leap right over Advent and go jump into the Christmas season. And there's always, within church kind of land and world, there's always these big conversations like, oh, we need to not forget about Advent, blah blah blah, all that. But I wanted to take a little, I want to kind of hold that up, because there's these questions, I think, about what we call this time, about what we call this moment even, and when we and how we speak about these days that God has given us. Because the reality is that what we call a thing has great power. It has great power. If you grow, I mean, we all know this from just, from everything. Growing up with children. If you have a parent or somebody in their life that just calls them stupid, a teacher or whatever calls them stupid and labels them stupid, that is going to have an impact. Now, that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to internalize that. Maybe they're going to push back against it, but it's going to have an impact. What you call a thing, not just how you describe it. You say, "Oh, this has this," but what you call it, what you name it, has incredible power. We can't forget again and again that the principal way in which Christ casts out demons, which is a huge deal, by the way, in terms of establishing Jesus' authority, kind of as somebody a little greater than just a prophet, just a great teacher. All of these witnesses to the casting out of demons is always by naming it, naming who they are, naming the destructive power that is in front of us, and that the naming of it actually gives mastery over it. You should think about that. The naming of a thing gives mastery over it. That we now have the ability to do something with it. We now have the ability to affect it. And so my question is, as we're in this kind of weird Advent season where we don't know what to call it because nobody calls it Advent, we're in the Christmas season. Come on, everybody knows that. But I think it's a greater question of what do we call this day that God has given us? What do we call it? Because there are a lot of names out there, and not only are there a lot of names out there, but the names change over time. You only have to look at the biblical story. There are great teachers, there are great saints of the past. There all of those that are a part of the narrative often have more than one name, and often their names change over time. Abram becomes Abraham, Sarai becomes Sarah, Joseph becomes Jephthah, whatever. My ancient Egyptian is kind of rusty. Jacob becomes Israel, Hosea becomes Joshua, Solomon becomes Jedediah. There's Naomi becomes Mara. There are again and again and again these name changes that happen by virtue of growth and transformation. And these are purposefully and diligently done. And so I want you to think about this in the context of this season. And when I say this season, even this day. And when I say this day, I mean even this moment. What is the temptation to call this day? Maybe you don't feel good. Maybe you got a headache. Maybe you got a tummy ache. Maybe you're worried about someone. Maybe you're carrying anxiety about this moment in the world. Maybe there is a worry laid on your heart that is legitimate and real and difficult. Maybe you have a grief or a sadness. Maybe you had a loss. That perhaps there are all these things that they're telling you to name this day. This is a horrible day. This is an awful day. This is a no good, very bad day. And that as we begin to reinforce these days, you ever had that moment when you kind of stumble out the door? I tried to get out the door this morning, and it took me an hour to get out the door. Literally, between finding my keys, between all the different things, it took me insanely, stupidly long to actually get out the door this morning. Sometimes it happens. That reality. That has an opportunity. I could let that name this day if I wanted to. But what God gives us is this invitation to look and to see what we will call this day. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And that doesn't mean we have to be completely happy, clappy all the time. That's not a reality. But to be glad in it, to be able to give thanksgiving and blessing in the midst, even of trial, even of grief, even of infirmity, even of brokenness, even in the difficulties of it, bring with us is actually in some ways our agency. It is ours to do, and it's God's to actually help us name this, to help us change the names of that which isn't working anymore into that which does work, as He did the saints of old again and again and again in Bible. Because this is because and if nothing shows us this, I think simply how we understand Jesus in this this context of this season. You see, because when we look to the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem, we actually look to all of the prophecies that come before. We look to all the namings of Jesus that have happened over hundreds, if not thousands of years, to the point that we see the arrival of this one who comes from God. And that's one who is God in our midst. And that arrival that has been portended with has all these different names. That there's all kinds of different names, even for Jesus, to be able to tease out another thing, and that another quality or another understanding, a way of turning the diamonds of that is Christ to see another flash and another piece of brilliance. What friends? What friends? As we look to the one who made us, as we look to the one who loves us into being, who look to the one who comes into the world to be as we are, so that we might be in relationship and be saved through that relationship. And when I say saved, I don't mean that we're going to be torn into the fiery pit. I mean that we are going to be welcomed around the table. We are going to be welcomed to the fire. We are going to be welcomed home from the long journey. We are going to be welcomed home from our worry and our anxiety and our fear and our sickness and our doubt. And that's the real truth of the world. That's the real truth of the world. That no matter how this darkness that we plunge into, no matter how dark it may get, that there will be a new light born. That there will be new light, and that every winter will give way to a spring. That this thing that we think is a dying is simply a rebirth into a new life and a new way and a new being. And that it is the naming of a new year and a new day and a new time. And so I think it all begins in what will we name today? What will we name today? Will it be a no good, very bad, really awful day? Or will we name it something else? Will we name it simply what it truly is, and absolutely is, as the day that the Lord has given us to be thankful and joyful in? There are 117 names of Jesus in Scripture. 117. And that they speak to this absolute reality that is beyond our contextual reality. Our reality is great when my blood sugar's, good and I've had a sandwich. My reality is grumpy when it's 3:00 in the afternoon and I need a Snickers bar. Like our reality is ever and always kind of sifting and changing and all this sort of stuff. But the absolute reality of Christ and the reality of this world in which we're living, the way in which you can't trust a Facebook profile because it's all a lie, and by lie I mean incomplete. You don't really know all that's going on with somebody. You can't trust the media. You can't trust even the things of what we even believe to be deep trust often is a wink and a nod, or a handshake and a smile. So I want to leave you today with this quote from one of my favorites, Leonard Sweet, who says this: "In a world of Cheshire cat absolutes, one absolute remains absolute. That absolute is Jesus, the way, the truth, the life, and a cornucopia of 117 other scriptural names. Names like the bright morning star, the dayspring from on high, the sun of righteousness, the lily of the valley, the rose of Sharon, the bread of life, the door of the sheepfold, the good shepherd, the horn of salvation, the Lamb of God, the root of David, the true vine, the first fruits, the cornerstone of the church, the Alpha and the Omega, the name above all names. Friends, whatever you do today, name this day well. Name it as a day that has as a part of it the bright morning star and the name above all names. That in this Advent, Christmas, dark time, you may know the light of the world. Peace and grace to you, my friends, and we'll pick it up next week. I'm actually away the next couple days, so I will not be here. Though I believe we do have on tap some of the greatest hits reels from our collection over these years. So there will be an 11:11 here. It just won't be live, but we'll pick it up live next week, next Tuesday, with another 11:11. Peace and grace to you, my friends.